Hi, we are working on the consideration. What is consideration? So let's see. Consideration is one of the essential elements of a valid contract. A consideration means something in return, that is quid pro quo. What is something had been explained by Justice Lush in the leading English case Curry versus Misa Ascender. A valuable consideration in the sense of law may consist either in some right, interest, profit, benefit, all positive, right? Accruing to one party or some forbearance, detriment, loss, responsibility, suffered, undertaken. So basically, it can be positive or negative. So whether you get some benefit, something, or you get a detriment or stay away, you abstain from. So even our definitions of Indian Contract Act says, when at the desire of the promisor, the promisor or any other person has done or abstained from. So this is what is consideration, right? Something you do to something of sort of benefit or detriment. This is called a consideration, right? So here X promises to deliver his good to Y and Y promises to pay ₹1,000 on delivery. In this case, the consideration for each of these promises is under. For X promise, what is the consideration? Y is promised to pay 1,000 on delivery. For Y's promise, X promised to deliver his goods. These are all the consideration. Similarly, in the diagram illustrated, like you are buying a mobile and you are supposed to give 5,000 rupees to the other person. So the mobile and the 5,000 rupees you are getting is both are consideration, right? So this is how it is. X owes Y rupees 10,000. Y promises X not to file a suit against him for 1 year on X agreeing to pay him rupees 5,000 more. In this case, the consideration for each of the promise is under. Means what? I owe you means X owes Y 10,000. Means X is supposed to give Y 10,000 rupees. Y is promising, if you give me 500 rupees more, 10,500, if you give me, I will not file a suit. Okay. So X promises forbearance on the part of Y to file a suit. Means I will not file a suit. Y's promises, X promised to pay 500 more. So this is how it works. So what are all the essential elements of a consideration? Section 2D says, it must be given only at the desire of the promisor. Right? An act constituting consideration must have been done at the desire or request of the promisor. Thus an act done at the desire of a third party or without desire of the promisor cannot constitute a valid consideration. So there are certain provisions regarding third party also. We'll see maybe a stranger and things like that. We'll see later. But as of now, it is at the desire or request of the promisor. Okay. We'll study an example. A's son is lost. Very clear. A's son gone somewhere. B is going for searching. B is somebody else. Right? A is one person. A's son is another person. B is gone. B is going for searching. So can B claim remuneration? Remuneration is benefit. Some paisa, right? Fees. From A. If B does this act voluntarily, this is the question. B does this act at the request of A, right? Second. Third is, if B does this act at the request of C. C is somebody else, right? C is not in the problem at all. C is somebody else. Third part. So let us see each one. In this case, A1 voluntarily cannot claim remuneration. It is not done at the request of A. Second point, at the request of A, so he can claim. Third point, C is somebody else, so you cannot claim remuneration. X spent 1 lakh rupees at the construction of shops at the request of the collector of the district. You know collector, district collectors. He is constructing a shopping complex, some X. X is some contractor or somebody. So the collector of the district is asking him to construct a shopping complex for 1 lakh rupees. In consideration of this, Y, a shopkeeper, promised to pay some money to X. It was held that this agreement was void without consideration because X has constructed the shops at the request of collector and not the desire of Y. Y giving money is not at all considered. You are some person. The collector is and the party X are in relationship over a contract. Y is somebody else. So Y cannot be considered at all. So money gone waste. And consideration may move from any person. A, B, C, D, E, F. Anybody can give consideration, right? An act constituting consideration may be done by the promisee himself or any other person, stranger to consideration. Stranger means somebody outside. Okay. So thus it is a material who furnishes the consideration and therefore may move from promisee to any other promisee or any other. So let us explain this in detail. X is a person by a deed of gift deed, right? Transferred certain property to her daughter Y with the direction that Y should pay Z an annuity. Z is somebody else, right? So this lady or the person is giving some gift to the daughter, saying you pay some money to Z every year. Okay. On the same day, Y executed a deed in writing in favor of Z. I will give the annuity. Right? Later, Y refused to pay the annuity on the plea that no consideration had moved from Z. So now what happens? X, even though it's a stranger, maybe giving some property deed or whatever, so Y can give the annuity to Z. It was held that Z was entitled to maintain a suit because a consideration did not necessarily move from the promisee. It may move from any other person. Right? You understand? This is the case for Chinnaya versus Ramaya. Move at the desire of the promiser only, not at third party's desire. It has to move from the promiser. But can come from third party if the promiser desires so. So this is how it works. Right? Past consideration, present consideration. The consideration which is already moved before the formation of the agreement. X renders some service to Y at Y's request in the month of May. In June, Y promises to pay X ₹1,000 for his past services. Past services amount to past consideration. X can recover to his 1,000 from Y. Right? Past means something done earlier, not now. Present means simultaneously, along with the promise. Future means I do something now, you do it later. The consideration which is to be moved after the formation of the agreement is called future consideration. X promises to deliver certain goods to Y after 10 days and Y promises to pay after 10 days from the date of delivery. So that is a future consideration. Past, something happened before, you are giving the consideration, you are working for the consideration. Consideration is already transferred. So you are working now. Present is, it is moving along. Future is, it may move later. It must be of some value. The consideration need not be adequate to the promisee. but it must be of some value in the eye of the law. It is understood in the sense of something in return, and something can be annoying, adequate, or grossly inadequate. The consideration need not be adequate to the promisee, but it must be of some value in the eye of law. Promise, some value. Maybe it cannot be very, very trivial. It should be decent, right? But it need not be adequate. Adequate means 100 rupees if he has to give, need not be 80 rupees or 90 rupees, but of some decent value, right? According to explanation 2 of section 25, that is where it is dealt. An agreement to which consent of the promisor is freely given is not void merely because the consideration is inadequate. Because I give you less, it is not called, it cannot be cancelled, right? Consideration is consideration, even if it is less. But the inadequacy of the consideration may be taken into account by the court in determining the question whether the consent of the promisor was freely given. Right? A agrees to sell a horse worth 1000 rupees for rupees 10. A denies that his consent to the agreement was freely given. But the inadequacy of consideration is a fact which the court has to take into account in considering whether note A's consent is freely given. So, buying a horse of worth of 1000 rupees for 10 rupees amounts to non-free consent, right? Maybe is consideration should be of some value. Inadequacy will be decided by court. Inadequacy will be decided by. It must be real and not illusory. Illusory is some fiction, right? X engages Y for doing a certain work, promises to pay reasonable remuneration. What is reasonable? Right? After finishing your work, you ask for money, you say reasonable. 1 rupee if you give, it cannot be accepted, right? So the promise is not enforceable because the consideration is uncertain. X promises to put life into Y's dead wife, and Y promises to pay 1 lakh rupees. This agreement is void because consideration is physically impossible to perform, not real. Okay? So, something other than the promiser's existing obligation. You already have an obligation. You are supposed to give me 1000 rupees. This cannot be settled against another consideration. So this consideration is separate. The future other thing, whatever you are working now, this contract consideration is separate. Right? X promises his advocate to pay an additional sum if the suit was successful. Means what? Already he is promised to give some money. Additionally, he cannot give money. So even if it is decided in favor of X, he cannot ask for it. Right? So that whatever consideration, existing obligation to pay the advocate's fee, additional sum is promised. That is other than the existing obligation. X had received summons to appear before a court of law as witness on behalf of Y. He promised to pay some money for his trouble. This is also void. Right? The first one is the lawyer supposed to conduct the case for the do the service for the money he is taking it. Over and above, you cannot ask for it. Right? Similarly, this. Right? So here, X promises to deliver his good to Y, and Y promises to pay rupees 1000 on. Can neither be lawful or opposed to, unlawful or opposed to public policy. It cannot be illegal. 1000 to beat Z. Beating Z is a illegal item. It's an unlawful item. Y beats Z and claim 1000 from X. Y cannot recover. Very clear. X promises Y to obtain an employment in the public service. Right? Government service, if you want to get a job, if you are paying somebody bribe, it's illegal, right? So that you cannot naturalize and ask the court to intervene. That is not possible. Already void. It's an unlawful consideration. Beating someone is illegal, so this consideration